welcome to the comic panel. I'm Cody.
I'm Taylon.
I'm Jacob.
And I'm Shawenta.
And today we're going to be talking about Doom Patrol by Grant Morrison. We read the first 4 issues, Crawling from the Wreckage. We also had, let's see here, I've got the artist too. We've got art by Richard Case, John Nyberg, Doug Braithwaite, Scott Hanna, and Carlos Garzon, and then colorist Daniel Bozo and Michael Wolfman, and John Workman is the letterer. Yeah, so, and I picked Doom Patrol for this episode, mostly because I was basically I finished the HBO Max season 1, and so it reminded me that I really liked this book, and so I decided to choose it. So, what was everybody else's thoughts? Real quick, Talon, you got anything?
Yeah, I was, after reading it, just like out of my mind melted.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of like the way that I was the first time I read it too, and I just like, I think that it's like really just a lot of weird that I really enjoy. Like, this is the kind of weird that I like, you know? But yeah, basically.
Wait, Swinton and Jake?
Oh yeah. You guys have?
It was definitely weird. There was a lot. It falls into the kind of weird, and because it's Grant Morrison, I think I kind of feel about it a little more than I normally would. It feels like it's a weird kind of like occult thing, with like a lot of what they're talking about. Because I know, like, and we'll get into it later, but there's like a concept in occultism of like holding to different concepts in your mind, and they are both like as true as each other, even though they should cancel each other out. So like the whole, especially this arc, feels like a really big like occult like nod. And then like later he talks about like Jack the Ripper and his like and some of his victims, and that's another big occult nod. It's kind of wild.
I missed the Jack the Ripper reference. I didn't catch that.
I think it's in one of the later. I didn't get like the whole volume. I just picked up like the one that's got like the first 2 arcs, so like 19 to 22. Which is Crawl from the Wreckage. And then the next one after that is the one where he talks about Jack the Ripper.
Gotcha.
And it's like the Red King or whatever. And that's like a whole big like occult thing. I'm like 100% sure about that.
Okay. Cool.
I mean, this is my first introduction to these characters, and I've been actually interested in watching the television show. Because, I mean, it looks... It's not the right word, but quirky enough. It's, like, different enough that it's interesting sounding to me. Doom Patrol or whatever. But, yeah, I really like the characters, but the threat they face, I feel like, is vague in a way that I don't tend to like, because I don't feel like the stakes are really that clear. Like, you know, the constant, like, we'll get into it, but, like, new powers here, new powers there. Like, we'll just deal with it because something will come up.
Yeah, I can really feel that because...
But yeah, I like the characters enough.
Yeah, I was just
that I could, like, read more of it, for sure.
Oh. I was just gonna say, basically, that, I found myself, like, I really was liking the build-up in this story, and then, like, as it got more and more to, like, the action sequences and the climax, I was just like, nah. I mean, like, I like the high concept, like, philosophical kind of, like, you know, like we've been saying, we'll get into it, and we really will, but, you know, just all of that stuff is, like, really interesting to me, but at the same time, yeah, it's a little bit too vague to be like really compelling.
Before we get too much into it, the song that was played at the beginning of this was Wonder Woman 1984, based off of that, For the World by Nerd Out, YouTube channel that does music about certain like geek or nerd subjects. Off the top, they have songs for Assassin's Creed, The Mandalorian. We showed some songs by them in the past about Spider-Man. So that was cool.
So, issue number 19. This is the start of a new arc, and with Grant Morrison writing, and it was called Crawling from the Wreckage. And basically, this has all started out of, like, basically the original Doom Patrol is either dead, except for one of them is in a coma, and Cliff Steele, Robotman, has checked himself into a what do we call it?
Institution?
A mental institution, yes, a mental hospital. So that's where we pick up, and so I wanted to just like talk about some of the characters that we're going to be, or that we met in this story. So, like I just said, Cliff Steele, Robotman, is what his name is, or his superhero name, I guess. But most people call him Cliff, I feel like. He is a golden robot with a human brain. And so, for all intents and purposes, he is human. He just doesn't have a human body. He describes himself as a full amputee. And then, so we have Larry Trainor in the negative spirit, and eventually Rebis, but we will get to who Rebis is in a little bit.
So you're saying that Larry Trainor was not in the original Doom Patrol?
Well, that's, I think, maybe. I'll have to get back to you on that one. But kind of. I think he was the negative man, but I don't think that he necessarily was on the original Doom Patrol. Yeah, we've got, so like I was just saying though, Larry Trainor was the negative man, and he has this negative spirit that like flies out of his body, and that's really the superpowered one, so to speak. And then Jane, Crazy Jane, she is a woman with multiple personalities.
Is it like 67 of them?
No, 64.
64.
Yeah. And I guess the proper term in today's words would be dissociative identity disorder. And granted, like lots of portrayals in media of dissociative identity disorder, it's not how the disorder really is, but suffice it to say, it is, that is what they're trying to display in this book. And she, because of a gene bomb, I think is what it's called.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what. There are like two things that they keep mentioning in the book, which I feel like maybe if you had read the previous issues, we might know about. It's the gene bomb and whatever happened to the original Doom Patrol, which like I don't know about, and they didn't tell us.
Right.
So
yeah,
I was kind of hoping somebody else would have come in with that information.
No, so I kind of have a little bit of information on that. Basically, I think it was a prior like DC event. I don't remember which one it was, but they referred to it as an invasion. So I think it was an alien invasion. It's definitely not Crisis on Infinite Earths, because this is a book from 1989, and Crisis on Infinite Earths happened in 1980. But some sort of invasion, and it resulted in a gene bomb blowing up, creating more superpowered people. Don't really know exactly which story that is, but yeah, it was a crossover event, I believe.
was gonna say, like, I was gonna say, like, it had those little things keep coming up, and I didn't really know what they were, and it was used as, like, an explanation for certain, like, people being the way they are. But I also kind of appreciated the fact that every issue didn't have, like, a 3-page recap of, like, stuff that happened in the last issue. Just, like, padding for time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess that's true, you know, and I didn't really think about that. I also didn't really think about the fact that usually, like, you know, even if there isn't, like, an explainer of what happened, usually it'll be all, like, read, you know, blah, 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 these last issues to figure out what happened, you know, and it didn't do that. So that's kind of interesting, too.
Yeah, when I came across those, I found it just easy to be like, okay, yeah, that's something that happened. All right, moving on. Like, that's something we all know. Gotcha.
I mean, that's how normal people talk, right? They don't just be like, don't you remember that time that thing happened where we were both there?
Yeah. Also, so something interesting too about Cliff was that, like, there's a whole part where he's in the mental institution and he's confronted by a guy named Will Magnus. And Will Magnus was the creator of the Metal Men, a different superhero team in DC. Which, like, you know, there was Gold Man, Silver Man, Platinum Man, Mercury Man, Platinum Girl. You know, they're all metal robots. You know, but like I looked it up and I could not actually find, like, on the Wikipedia pages, like, the crossover. Like, I mean, I would assume that Cliff is supposed to be Gold Man, but also like it never, like, both on Robot Man's Wikipedia page it doesn't talk about that, and on the Metal Man Wikipedia page it doesn't talk about him. So I'm like, this is like a big inconsistency. They never noticed.
I don't know. I think Magnus just had, like, another body laying around, because I think, like, one of the reveals that they make in the Metal Man series is that, like, they're supposed to be, like, automatons, robots with, like, AI, but I think part of the reveal is that they might have been people before they were Metal Men. And so, like, he's just, like, capturing them in, like, robot bodies.
I see. Okay. So not just Cliff, then, but all of them. Interesting.
Yeah.
I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was just extra weird, though, because, like, you know, because I assumed that he would be Goldman, you know, and then it was all like, Goldman has the power to stretch his limbs out, and I was like, that's never something I've seen him do.
So, just like a quick, I guess, description of the gene bomb.
Mm-hmm.
So, the gene bomb was a device created by a renegade dominator scientist of low caste, apparently.
Should have known it was the Dominators.
Yes. And so they used it to. They attempted to negate the effects of the metagene to get rid of metahuman powers, active and dormant. But so what happened?
They didn't do a very good job.
No. So basically, the gene bomb was detonated, and metahumans lost control of their powers. So it didn't, like, get rid of them; they just couldn't control them anymore. And then they fell into comas, which I'm gonna assume is Rhea.
Yeah,
might have been one of those
Mm-hmm.
metahumans. And Scott Fisher of the Doom Patrol was the only one to die from it. But that was due to him having leukemia. And then Negative Woman and Tempest permanently lost their powers. So I'm not sure who any of those are.
I wonder if Negative Woman is related to Larry Trainor in some way, because he's been referred to as Negative Man.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And then it says the gene bomb had the side effect of jump-starting latent metagenes within a small number of humans across the world, including Max Lord. And then, and it resurrected Metamorpho.
Okay.
So, yeah. That's pretty neat.
It seems like their plan to get rid of metahumans only resulted in there being more metahumans.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty precisely. Man, you know, like obviously like this story was designed just to be like a simple like plot device to like, you know, bring in more metahumans, you know? But like what was that story, Jake? That was like the one that was like saying that the government was creating metahumans in the DC universe?
Oh, that is it's the Doomsday Clock.
Okay,
It's like an alternate.
Doomsday Clock. That's right. Yeah, I really would have brought that story in. Just been like the government created the gene bomb.
Yeah, it could have based on like its result.
Yeah. Anyway, though, back to the main story, not the side stories. This always happens when we read superhero comics. Like 10 things spill out. So, oh yeah, also, before we move on from Will Magnus, though, I liked how his art was, like, super, like, stylized to, like, a golden age kind of era, I felt like. Like, everybody else looked, like, you know, different from him, to me. I don't know if anybody else noticed
Yeah, he really stood out.
Yeah.
I also just like him smoking his pipe.
Yeah.
Consoling Cliff.
Yeah, and I like just the division between them. Like, like you almost think that maybe Cliff doesn't remember him, and then he's like, you know, like, how could I forget that condescending voice? It's just like, oh. But I mean, really, also...
It's literally, he looks so pompous with his little pipe, and like you were saying, the different art style. I like noticed that I liked his art style more, but I didn't realize the difference really. I couldn't tell why. But yeah, he really stands out.
Yeah, it reminded me of like basically like either Jack Kirby or Steve Ditko, you know, just like really classic and not a lot of like fine detail, just kind of like, you know, I mean it's still good, but it's like a little bit less in certain ways. I don't know. I mean, I'm not trying to say that Jack Kirby or Steve Ditko is less than like other artists, because obviously that's false. But just like
blasphemous even.
But like the way that they add detail versus other artists decide to add detail are different. And that's what I felt like. But yeah.
We went through Robotman, Crazy Jane, and Larry Trainor, Will Magnus. So I guess what's left is Niles Caulder.
Oh yeah. So Niles Caulder, also known as the Chief, he is in a wheelchair, and he is basically the leader of the Doom Patrol. He kind of groups them together and like sends them on missions and stuff. And he doesn't have any powers. He's like kind of smart, I guess.
I mean, yeah, he's definitely like a less charismatic Charles Xavier, but I guess he also has a gun and like a superpowered wheelchair.
Yeah.
Because, like, it blows down a door, and then he just, like, pulls out a gun and shoots a guy. So...
Yeah.
I do like how you described him as Charles Xavier, but with a gun.
Yeah, and also, Jake, that actually brings up a good point that I wanted to mention, is that there's actually been a long disputed question of whether the X-Men stole the layout of the Doom Patrol, or the Doom Patrol stole the layout of the X-Men.
I mean, I guess like I can see where it comes from, but like once you get past Charles Xavier, like the Charles Xavier and the Chief like comparison, all the other like individual characters, like especially like in the original lineup of the X-Men and to the original lineup of Doom Patrol, like it's incredibly different.
Yeah, that's a good point. And like, you know, of course they also continue to like, you know, carve out their differences as they went on too, because it's like, you know, I think later on X-Men got into some more weird territory, but I feel like Doom Patrol has always been like tackling the weird, you know? Where it's like...
Yeah, I would agree with that, definitely. And I think there's a difference in like I think it's always interesting like how characters get their powers. and so like for Doom Patrol, something has affected these people, like to get their powers. They haven't like been, as opposed to like X-Men's case, they are predisposed to have their powers because of the X gene. I guess there's also the meta gene, but also like I don't think Cliff Steele had the meta gene when he became Robotman.
Yeah.
I think
Wasn't there a point when they like talked about the hero gene?
The meta gene?
The hero gene?
I'm not recalling.
I think that's just like hero gene and like meta gene are like being used interchangeably.
Okay. Because I found that a really interesting way of calling it that. Or, it's an interesting name.
Yeah. There was one
choice.
point where somebody referred to Cliff as having the hero gene or something in him, and I thought that they were just being like coy, not like literally meaning that he had like a special gene, but they were all like, yeah, you're still a hero, it's still in you, but like it is very unclear because it's all like, wait, in this world of superheroes that have like superpowers because of genetics, like what do you mean?
I took it to mean like, oh, he's heroic.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, in that specific instance that I'm talking about, yeah, that's what I think I thought too. But yeah, it was still very confusing. It's like, I feel like that particular metaphor would be out of youth at this point in that world.
Didn't they say Crazy Jane had
the gene as well? She has the gene. It was probably dormant and then it got activated by the bomb. Yeah. Yeah, and I guess we could talk a little bit more about Jane too. So her real name is Kay Chalice, and I hadn't realized how much about her was revealed in like the first issue. I thought a lot of it was like a little bit more mysterious, and then like they drew it out throughout the series, and I was like, wow, I just forgot a bunch of these details, and then they were re-revealed to me as I read the story. But yeah, like basically, like we've said, she has 64 different personalities, and they each have a different superpower attributed to them. So, like, I mean, I think I'm trying to think of all of the ones I can think of. So there's Flick, who can teleport. Flint, sorry, Flint. There's Hammerhead, who I think is just really strong. Black Anise, who like her body like physically changes and becomes like like this demon looking thing with like sharp claws. One of them I can't remember what the name is, but like she in the final issue she like gets super tall and becomes a sun that can
Spinning Jane, I think.
Spinning Jane
or Spinning Jenny, something like that.
Something like that, yeah. But yeah, she can shoot fireballs.
Spinning Jenny.
So yeah, she, and there's surely ones that I'm pretty sure, like, they do not all get categorized in the story.
I mean, yeah, like we see one, and like the only thing that like that personality does, like on panel, is just like have a panic attack, and then like another personality takes over and says, "Oh, that's that one." All she does is have a panic attack all the time. It's like that doesn't really seem like a power. It's like that's like because like let's say Crazy Jane didn't get abused and caused her to be disassociated. I don't think that she could support that many different powers.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's supposed to be like, what Grant Morrison is calling upon even is like, so I obviously don't have like any scientific papers to like back myself up, but I've heard of this phenomenon where people with dissociative identity disorder have, one of their personalities is sick with an ailment, and it will only present when they are displaying that personality. The ailment will go away when they switch personalities. So it is true if she didn't have that trauma and she didn't have that many personalities, the gene bomb, or theoretically, she would only get one. he would get the K Chalice power, whatever that is.
I've also heard it to where
I mean, literally,
certain
there's that one
personalities
part.
would have
There's
glasses.
literally.
Sorry, she went to.
Yeah.
There's literally the one part where she corrects Cliff and says that no, they're not personalities, they're different people.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. And yeah, actually, I'll talk more about that because I'm not there yet. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting too. Oh yeah. Also, I thought it was really interesting in the first issue. Like, so I mean, of course, the title is called Wrecking or Crawling from the Wreckage, and so like Cliff is having a dream where he's like crawling away from his car accident, and he's like holding his brain, and what does he say? I saved the beautiful bit. And then at the end, there's a guy on fire, and he's crawling from a car accident, and it's like the Scissormen, which is like the next big threat, next issue. So I just liked that kind of symmetry, It was cool.
We also have Joshua Clay, which is probably with the original Doom Patrol.
Kind of. I don't think that he was part of the original, but he was a superhero, and then he kind of makes the choice that he doesn't want to be anymore.
What's interesting is that, like, so Joshua Clay, I was like, now that name sounds familiar. I'm pretty sure he was in the original Doom Patrol. And he was, but he is not the same character. Like he's like the innkeeper of the original Doom Patrol.
Oh, in the show.
In the show, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed that too when I watched the TV show. I was like, oh, that's how they're doing this. Okay, they're not gonna have him like be around. Yeah. So yeah, I guess he was part of the Doom Patrol originally. I thought maybe not. And yeah, he was known as Tempest when he was a superhero.
Oh wait, hey, okay. That's interesting. Other metahumans, including so Tempest was the one who permanently lost their powers in the gene bomb incident.
Oh, well, that's
interesting.
Especially because Robotman in one of the issues, like, you still have your powers, and then he blasts.
Yeah.
Okay, that's an inconsistency with Wikipedia then, or whatever wiki you're on.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, he's basically, though, his deal is that he just kind of wants, like, he doesn't really know what he wants to do. He doesn't want to stay with the Doom Patrol necessarily, like, or he doesn't want to stay with being a superhero, but he doesn't know where else to go. He doesn't feel like there's a place in society for him, which I'm kind of like, you at least you look like a normal, like, person. Like, Cliff, like, really can't integrate into society very easily.
Well, he does it in the Doom Patrol so easily, TV show. He just walks into a birthday party.
That's true. He does. It is really as easy as just trying, apparently. But oh yeah. Also, one more thing from the first issue of the story before we move on to the next issue is that it seems like both Cliff and Jane are starting, like, basically, I guess this is also the beginning of the next issue. They are developing a friendship that is helping both of them with their mental issues to a degree.
And I will say, this is, like, more clear the more you read about Jane. But to me, Jane, it's either that she seems she's either less crazy in the book than in the show, or she's less rude in the book than in the show. Yeah. I don't know which one it is.
So, yeah, that's kind of something I noticed too. Difference between the show and the book is that, like, I would say that it's more of her personalities have a tendency to err on the side of aggression in the show. Like, she's just very aggressive in a lot of her personalities that she displays. Well, this one is a little bit more, like, bad more often, it seems like. A little bit more downplayed. But yeah. So, issue number 20.
But before
sorry.
we go on to the next issue, issue 1 ends with some guy holding a book, a skeleton dude, and 2 detectives are like, all right, we're going to call our boss, and that boss is going to call the president, and the president is going to call Niles Caulder. Which I thought was interesting, because I was like, with Niles, that's an interesting choice.
Yeah, it's setting up the idea that there are people in this world that have more power in the United States than the president.
Yeah,
I should also say, like, it wasn't just a skeleton they found on the side of the road. Like, this dude, like, ran his truck into, like, a bus, right? And then it just caught aflame, and he was fully Human Torch style.
Yeah.
Engulfed in flames.
That's definitely what happened.
Gotcha.
And then the book was just fine.
So yeah, it's a little suspicious.
I thought it was that was his powers. Like, I thought he was actually like a skeleton.
Oh no, no.
Oh yeah, no, that.
Yeah, no, it's like I was
He
saying.
did not survive his powers then.
Yeah. No, it's just like I was saying, the symmetry with the beginning. He's crawling from the wreckage. He's on fire.
Yeah, and then he also mentions the Scissormen, which will be introduced more in the second issue.
Yeah.
Oh man,
So,
it sucks because every time they say the Scissormen, I keep thinking of Clock Tower, the one video game where they have like a character that just has giant scissors. And it's just like the dorkiest game ever, so I can't take the Scissormen super seriously.
I mean, they're not to be taken super seriously either.
Well, I mean, they are threatening.
Just have giant scissors.
They seem like a pretty big problem.
Once you realize what they can do with those scissors, I feel like it's a little bit more like, oh, that's dangerous.
Yeah.
Can't fix that.
I spent a long time trying to figure out what it was that they were saying, and apparently they were just saying just random words, like they don't mean anything.
Yeah.
And that just like totally took everything out of them. Like all the threatening, I was like, okay, I'm done with these guys.
I don't know. I feel like if somebody is like yelling nonsense at me while running after me with a giant pair of scissors, I feel like that's scarier than if they were just like yelling coherent sentences.
Yeah. Man, so I was there at one point, Taylor, and I was like, wait, what are these guys saying when I first read it? But on the second time, now I'm all like, man, did Grant Morrison make a secret code that the Scissormen are speaking? Like, I wouldn't put it past him entirely.
No, from what I found...
It's possible.
Yes, it is possible.
Like, how long did you work on these scripts, Grant? So we start off the next issue with a priest, and he likes to walk around a dump. That's what it is, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
And he wants to find inspiration for his sermons. And so he finds a sign that says, "Have faith in God." And then right then, magically, a fish flies down from the sky and hits the sign.
Mm-hmm.
And then basically more and more fish start coming down. Pallas, salmon, trout, but no cod. And I just thought that was so funny because cod rhymes with God.
Yeah, it's also like part of the sign is covered up like on the G, so it's like have faith in cod, not in God.
And then a refrigerator falls from the sky and kills him.
Up until that point, I would have said cloudy with a chance of fish.
Yeah, I guess like going back on this, like that opening scene doesn't really make a whole lot of sense with like what we learn about the Scissormen.
Yeah,
it's like because they never do that again.
Yeah.
They never like drop appliances on anybody. They don't make it rain fish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have no idea what that was about, but I thought it was just
Unless, yeah, it could just be a part of like they talk about like a bunch of weird paranormal stuff happens throughout the world when the Scissormen like come into the world. So maybe that's what it is. It's just an extension of that.
Yeah, I would think so.
yeah.
But then like all the other like weird stuff they show us like seems to be directly related to a Scissorman.
And I guess like yeah. Also, while yeah, sorry, it doesn't make sense really, except for that explanation that that kind of event would happen. The character, the priest, does get tangentially referenced later on.
Oh, you'll have to point that out.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, it was small, but it happens in this issue.
Also, I must say, I appreciate Niles Caulder's beard. Bearded mustache. I like that style.
It's
strong.
I don't know. For me,
it's impressive in like an old timey general kind of way, but like
Oh yeah.
now it like even in like the late '80s to early '90s, like that can't have been fashionable. I don't believe it.
Oh man, if I could grow that beard, I would.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that sometimes it gives him like. I mean, in these couple of like panels, he looks like very innocent, but in others he looks very unhinged occasionally. Where I'm like, ooh, okay.
Yes.
But yeah, so this the starting point of this is there's a doctor, just at the hospital. There is the chief, and there's Joshua Clay. And they're all talking about the state of Larry Trainor, who at first he seemed to be. So my understanding, which I may be wrong, is that he was like basically infected with the negative spirit, and so he was Negative Man, but also is like kind of like a little bit of a curse. Like he got to be a superhero, but also he didn't get to live his life. He had to stay wrapped up in bandages, etc., etc. But then he was cured. The negative spirit left his body, and then it came back. Mm-hmm. But not only did it come back, it was also awake. And so it decided for unknown reasons to Larry or anybody else except for
Grant Morrison.
Well, yeah, Grant Morrison and the spirit itself. It combined with Larry Trainor and the doctor that was overseeing him, Eleanor Poole. Mm-hmm. And so together, the three of them made the being Rebis.
Oh my gosh. I just so there's a panel where Rebis is sitting and they've got their legs crossed and they're sitting in front of a picture of Adam and Eve, and it just reminded me of the Trinity. The Holy Trinity.
Oh yeah, that's a good yeah. There's that. There's also the fact that it's like a man, a woman, and then like the spirit talks about being light and darkness, and so there's like a big sun that probably represents God, and then there's the apple that represents darkness. And I'm like, they're there in that picture. It's very symbolic. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and like basically like I just especially with how in the TV show, there's just Larry Trainor in the TV show, no Rebis, but there is the character Danny the Street. And Danny the Street, I'm kind of upset that we didn't get to read more of Doom Patrol because I love Danny the Street, but I'll just summarize who they are. Danny the Street is a genderqueer living street.
Okay.
There's a whole thing.
They can teleport.
Hey, you know what? If the Inhumans can have a living door, Doom Patrol can have a living street.
Yeah. So, but basically in the TV show, the pronouns of Danny do not get brought up at all. They're correct, and they're just always correct, and that was like really refreshing. That it was like, it doesn't have to be like a big deal. That it's like, use the right pronouns. It's not a he, it's not a she, it's they. And then but this one, it's like they're like really just feeding out that like not calling Rebis their name and like just like
And then Robotman being like, "Hey, you're still Larry Trainor. I'm gonna still call you that."
yeah, that was just like ugh.
Yeah, Eleanor's in there like, what the heck?
Yeah.
No, but see, what's interesting is that Rebis was going to say like we or us,
Mm-hmm.
and then they were like I, and after Robotman was like, I'm still gonna call you Larry.
Yeah. Which I think that was more of a accommodation for the people around them rather than how they would actually like to be addressed.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just like, literally, these three men are just being so like cruel, like talking about Rebis. They're like this abomination. And I'm like, wow.
They're so like, their minds are like so blown. It's like really dumb how like crazy they're going over this like fusion.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So it's like part man and women. Like I would understand their confusion, especially during this time.
I mean, but there's a thing, like, people are born intersex. That's a real thing.
Well, I mean, that statistical rarity.
The thing is, okay, 1.7% of people are born intersex. But, so it's like in the context of their world where there's people like Cliff who've like went through these like crazy transformation and then they're like, damn, this is crazy though. These three people became this. It's so weird. It's so weird. It's in there. Like,
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Jane's out there with what 60 plus personalities, and they're like,
So yeah, this is
"Figure out a way to
fine.
fix her."
Yeah. Yeah, so I was just shocked by that. And I'm surprised I wasn't more shocked like when I first read it, but you know, I was not as experienced when I first read it, but yeah, it was just like, wow, just a bunch of e-bags. So yeah. Also, like, one other thing I wanted to mention too, that kind of like I feel like it really like kind of it's really interesting that it came out this year, but I feel like a lot of this series like secretly plays with it. Grant Morrison came out this year as non-binary, and so I feel like a lot of his characters are actually like, you know,
I didn't know that.
yeah, very like experimentation, you know, in character work with that kind of idea, that identity. And I like that it feels like, you know, they're all like kind of in the closet in that way, because like, you know, you could really like take it to the extent where it's like Rebis is obviously like two genders, but then like Robotman is like technically no gender, like he identifies as male, so you know, is male, but he doesn't have, you know, necessarily male characteristics. He has robot characteristics.
It just reminded me of like when I think it was during this issue where Crazy Jane goes up to Robotman and they're having a conversation and she's like, "Oh yeah, you know, our personalities, you know, we really like you." And then they're like, and so I said Black Anise.
Anise is how you say it, yeah.
Gotcha. So Black Anise. She was like, Black Anise says that you're the first man that she didn't want to castrate, so...
Yeah, and he was all like, too late.
Yeah.
And it's true,
It seems like it comes up for Cliff a lot that like he's like not a person in a human body anymore.
Yeah. It does.
I mean,
Which, like,
he
I
brings
guess-
it up too a lot. Like in the first issue, he talks about it a lot. I really do like the part, I think, in the first issue where Magnus, I think, Will Magnus, is like, you know, you gotta stop destroying yourself. And he's like, I couldn't if I wanted to. And then, like, shows by, like, just pounding his head in a wall and, like, breaking the wall, but not him.
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, and then, like, also, I feel like also, you know, this issue in particular too kind of like deals a lot with like, and I'm kind of interested to hear everybody else's take on this theory, because it feels like it deals a lot with like sexual deviance and like gender deviance of the time, because like, you know, even like the next scene after we leave Rebis is the young boy, he's reading like a porn magazine basically, and you know, it's like, so in one way, so this is where the priest comes in. The priest gave it to him, which is like, you know, creepy and weird and bad, but like, yeah, the idea of like, you know, the deviance like being bad and taboo and then like coming to life, and you know, the boy is scared about that.
Oh yeah, because so he was trying to keep the door closed in a cabinet, and he was like, all the magazines are coming alive.
Yeah, I thought that they were on top of the bookshelf or the dresser or wardrobe, whatever it is. You know, that was a little confusing to me too. But in principle, you know, it's like the idea that like, yeah, there's just like a lot of like kind of like seemingly taboo content, you know, and like it's being questioned. I was wondering what everybody else thought about that, or if there was any thoughts.
I didn't have any thoughts.
No.
I mean, I didn't think it was. I thought it was like a few times. I didn't feel like it was that big of a theme, I guess.
Yeah, I guess I could
see
see
how
that
it's
too.
like he sees it as punishment, but I don't think it repeats enough times for it to be that big of a theme.
Yeah, that's pretty fair. And like, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, I don't actually remember him saying he got it from the priest. I thought he was just gonna confess to the priest that he had it. Like, he's not looking forward to Sunday when he has to confess.
So yeah, I guess let me see here. So every hour, every minute, every second brings Sunday closer. The confessional will smell of damp raincoats and wet hair in the priest's aftershave. Father, it has been 3 weeks since my last confession, and it was Jamie Belshaw that gave me the dirty books. Okay. Actually, yeah, you're right. Okay, so the priest did not give it. Okay. The way that I read it, I thought that the priest like gave it to Jamie Belshaw, and then like Jamie Belshaw had to pass it off to him. Okay, that makes more sense. Good point. Okay. Then yeah, that there's a lot less there to unpack than I thought there was. So that makes sense. And yeah, basically what happens with this boy though is that, like, you know, the doors to his wardrobe start like, you know, shaking, and then they open and he gets cut out of reality. So there's just like a kind of a white shadow where he was.
Yep.
And then we go back to the chief talking about Rebis.
And basically that conversation ends with Niles being like, "Hey, do you want to join the team?"
Yeah. Yeah, the pose that Rebis is in, I found like really interesting. Like, I was like, why? Like, I feel like it's trying to say something, like, you know, like they were just like sitting down, like ready to talk to Niles, but then when they left the room, they were just all like, let me just like float with my arms above my head, like, you know, not quite naked because they're covered in bandages, but like, yeah, it was just kind of like interesting. I felt like that was supposed to mean something, but wasn't clear either.
Gotcha.
But also maybe I'm just trying to like derive too much meaning from this book.
Maybe.
I mean,
I don't know. Maybe it's just the artist showing off their anatomy.
Yeah.
I think
No,
it
they're
is
showing off
kind
their
of for the
skills.
audience to be like, oh, anatomy, and like look at how their anatomy seems to be merged between the two. But like, freaking Niles, just like Rebis like wearing the clothes, and then like Niles leaves, and of course Niles has to like peek his head in again, while like Rebis obviously seems to be like more comfortable, you know, without the bathrobe or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know, it just felt like such a weird, like, not knocking and just being like, hey, do you want to join my group?
It's
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it seems like he said he said her name, or sorry, he said their name before. Like, it wasn't like he was like, like he didn't speak before saying.
I don't know. I agree with Shawenta. I feel like he poked his head in, said Rebis, and then Rebis went yes. And then, which I mean, like.
I mean, I don't think
know.
Rebis actually minds, but I do think it feels very intrusive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say there's something to that because like before like the merging, Larry either could not still be a part of Doom Patrol or did not want to be a part of Doom Patrol anymore, and thus why he was in the hospital. And so like it's interesting that the chief goes in. It's like, oh, now that Larry's not in charge, I can get somebody with his powers back on the team.
That's a good point.
I mean, if he didn't have the negative spirit, he couldn't really join Doom Patrol, right? Like, it's no real point.
Yeah. Definitely.
But now that he's possessed again.
Yeah. And then, yeah, I really thought that Will Magnus was going to be gone by now. I was like, oh, you're still here. I thought you said that you had a business to run or something.
He was just being cheeky.
Yeah. But basically, yeah, he's visiting Cliff again, and he's basically all like, hey, actually, I realized something. I could just build you a new, better body. And I was like, wow, thanks. You could have thought of that years ago.
I mean, I don't think he ever has, but, I guess he theoretically could.
Yeah, it just seems so silly. Like, Tony Stark's literally, like, making a new suit, like, every 2 issues in Marvel Comics, and, like, this guy's like, it has been, like, a decade. Maybe I should, like, update you with the newest technology. We could do it.
Yeah, and then we get that interaction with Jane.
Yeah, and it's actually Driver 8.
Is it 8?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was Driver B.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I think it's 8 because it's supposed to be like infinity, but also like, upsides.
Yeah. And it also, like, it probably, like, symbolizes, like, a train track, too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I guess yeah.
Yeah, Driver 8 is saying, yeah, all our personalities are, starting to, we really like you. And he's like, oh, thanks.
Yeah. And then, like, right as they're having kind of a moment, that somebody crashes out of the 3rd-story window onto the ground.
Yeah.
I think that's higher than 3rd story.
Yeah.
But I could be wrong. I'm not an architect. What do I know?
Well, yeah, actually, I see 3 levels of the building in the panel, so I say 3rd story. But
yeah, I would agree with that.
It's at least 3rd story.
Yeah. Yeah. So this character is named Ralph, and he was seen in the 1st issue, but more like raving. And he was talking about the Scissormen there as well. And so he fell out of the window, and he's saying the Scissorman, and he has his fingers open like a scissor.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the 1st issue, he talked about the Scissorman floating in through the window and coming to him, and so he had, like, hurt himself or something with scissors, I think. And people, of course, were like, oh, he's a patient here, so whatever. Just, like, come back to a room.
Yeah, another instance where, like, it's, like, very obvious, like, how just, like, patently rude people are is, like, the orderlies, like, the Robotman even is just all like, fine, if you don't want my help. I'm like, that's not how you treat people when you're taking care of them. Oh my goodness. Definitely not a rare thing to see in media, especially media of the time. Like, I think of what's the 12 Monkeys with Bruce Willis. Have some mean orderlies in that movie.
Unaware of.
Yeah, it's a sci-fi movie with time travel.
Okay.
And yeah, basically that Bruce Willis can't tell if he actually was from the future, if he's just crazy because he gets locked up in a mental institution.
Oh, gotcha.
I mean, yeah, if you come from the future, you probably shouldn't like start bragging about it because people are gonna think you're crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then we cut to a guy that is riding on a train, and this was also kind of weird. It seemed like he was like very aware of what was going on, but also like not aware. But he basically he gets past the last stop, 23rd Street, and then it goes to um, Orqwith.
Yep.
That's the best I could
Yeah.
ever say that.
Yep.
That's as good as you're gonna get.
Yeah. And yeah, like basically, everything is made out of bone, and the Scissormen come into the train and get him.
Mm-hmm. Then we cut to Robotman.
Yeah.
And then,
I just wanted to say, in this scene, how did he know something was wrong? He's sitting, writing at his desk. He like itches his head, which there's nothing to itch.
Well, no, it looked like he was tuning. He was
like, he can hear.
Like,
that kind
of. Oh yeah, there's like the little like electrical thingies coming out, like cartoon thunderbolts looking.
Yeah. Okay. It was all like he's just sitting there, and then he wanders up the stairs. I'm like, that's strange. Yeah, and then so we have is that Baby Doll?
I don't know if that's Baby
Doll. No, I don't think it is. I think she says who it is a little bit later, but basically it's one of Jane's personalities. He is covered in blood and like just like basically repeating blood of the lamb, blood of the lamb, blood of the lamb. And like basically she's like, I warned you, they're coming. And then the Scissormen, and then so they have their first confrontation with the Scissormen.
Okay, so this is the part where I was like, what are they saying? So they say, thirdly, be grimmer as fond brevities, which is literally has no meaning.
Yes.
Eater with alders has no meaning, except for eater is a tree or a duck, and alders is a tree. One of those.
Yes.
And erethism, safer. Now, erethism is being overly fond of stimulation, especially of something kind.
Okay. That kind of stimulation. Yes. I see. Thank you. Yeah, and then here be no dragonette. Love that.
Nothing.
It
means nothing.
It's just bonkers. I like it. So yeah, and then they go to they basically just crash into a room, and there's a doctor who's just like kind of floating in space.
Mm-hmm.
And then he like his arm, well yeah, like the first half of his arms and part of his like legs, but not quite up to his knee, is just like gone.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just like, I'm a doctor, help me, I'm a doctor. It's kind of like weird that like people are like they have to like repeat phrases, it seems like. I'm like, is that like something, or was that just like a coincidence between Jane and him? I don't know. But yeah, then he starts freaking out because he can feel the Scissormen messing with his hands
and cutting his thumb.
Yeah. And then he blows up, and the Scissormen break through.
And then Flint teleports them to, I would assume, just outside the mental hospital.
Yes. Yeah, that's where they are. Yeah, you can actually tell that it's pretty well designed architecture. That the building that the guy fell out of is the same design in the background.
Oh yes, I see.
Man, they must have fixed that window pretty quick.
True. Yeah, and then so as the Scissormen descend upon the world, in Stuttgart. I don't know where Stuttgart is, but it must be a place.
Germany.
Oh, Germany? Okay.
That's where Loki showed up in Avengers.
Ah.
I'm pretty sure.
So all the clocks chime 15. Is that supposed to mean like because like it's supposed to chime like for how many hours it's been, but like there isn't a 15th hour? Is that what that means?
Does that? Well, yeah.
Yes, I think so. Yeah, like they chime 15 times, I think is what that's supposed to be saying. It's not like they don't say the number 15.
Well, no, I know that. What I'm trying to say though is it supposed to be weird because it's only supposed to chime 12 times, but it chimes 15.
Yes, 12 times at most. Like based on like the rest of this page with like weird supernatural stuff happening. Yes,
Okay.
that is.
I thought it was weird because it said simultaneously, and I'm like, wasn't that supposed
That
to
is
be
also
simultaneously?
kind of odd. But like, well, I mean, like, yeah, if you get them all at the factory and set them all at the same time, and then nothing else happens, then sure, they might go all at the same time.
Yeah.
But like before the advent of like nuclear or atomic clocks, then like it would be weird for all of your manually wound clocks to all chime at the same
Yeah,
time.
and that makes sense because like it seemed I can't think of like a specific example, but there's like I can think of like rooms full of clocks going off, and they're always like you can hear each individual one like being like different at different times, but like if they were all wound exactly, then it would just be a really loud, chime all at once. It'd just be like a really high volume.
Oh, gotcha. And then in Kyoto, 4 stainless steel pyramids are found rotating 5 feet above the ground, which I don't know what that even means. Like,
Yeah.
what's so supernatural about
Pyramids are magic. That's all it is, really. It's just pyramids are magic. Don't worry about it.
Like I mean, this girl that's like in front of the door, like in the pyramids are in front of her. It's like she seems pretty concerned, but like really she has it probably easy. I mean, actually the clocks are pretty easy too. The clocks in the pyramids, like not too bad,
Mhm.
and then
Oh, yeah. And it's
also not too bad.
In Patagonia, a library is discovered that contains books that are unknown and unreadable.
Yeah.
So
And
that's pretty
then
good.
probably
I mean,
the
how do
worst.
they know that?
Well, they can read
I
it.
mean, if they can't read them, then
That's what I mean. It could just be like books from somewhere else. Like they know only a few languages, probably. So
Yeah.
she's like, I can't read it. Oh well.
In Johannesburg, a little girl named Harriet inexplicably catches fire.
Spontaneous combustion.
Ugh. Yeah. And then, so this is in Iceland? Reykjavik?
oh yeah, Reykjavik.
Reykjavik. Oh, okay, yeah.
3 shadows come to life and murder their owners.
Now, that's pretty. That one, the last 2 are pretty messed up.
Yeah.
That's pretty
So
supernatural.
like,
I think escalating a little
Yeah.
bit.
I could be wrong, but like, isn't that a thing in like the original like Peter Pan, where like the shadow is like kind of evil?
Yeah, I think that is. That's true.
Okay,
And then in
that might have something to do with it. It's just like more like weird occult kind of magic stuff. But
yeah. In London,
I mean,
Madame
Peter
Tu-
fights his shadow and then makes friends with it again. That's all I remember.
In London, Madame Tussauds wax figure of John Lennon begins to bleed from bullet wound stigmata.
Mhm.
What is stigmata?
Stigmata, yeah. That's a biblical, just like the wound that Jesus got.
Oh,
it's so it's like sympathetic bleeding. If you're doing it for like magical reasoning, then like you put like pig's blood is usually like the most commonly used. Like you put it on your palms and such.
Gotcha. That's like a. I don't know, that just reminded me of Supernatural when it was a wax figure of Abe Lincoln went and killed somebody.
We can't talk about Supernatural 3 shows in a row. We just can't.
yeah. Instead, I'll say that reminds me of Gravity Falls.
All right.
Yeah.
There we go.
In that show,
I haven't watched Gravity Falls.
in that show, a bunch of wax figures come to life and murder a different wax figure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then
Well, now
Is
we're
it-
just making me think of the Magnus archives
Hey, that's also good.
online.
Can wax figures murder if they should be alive in the first place?
Jake, it sounds like you're asking a question that has a legit debate with it, but the answer is
Like,
obvious.
okay, but like, because like obviously you can't murder an inanimate object, but like if a bunch of animate objects or inanimate objects become animate and murder another or render another used to be inanimate object back to inanimate, is that murder?
I'm gonna say, while there is no legal precedent for it, morally, yes.
If they eat the other one, is that cannibalism? I would say yes.
Yes.
What if it's a different kind of wax?
As long as
Then you're just being nitpicky.
yeah, I agree.
Okay, but like if you break it down, human meat is just like, amino acids and such, and so is like cow meat.
Okay, no,
But,
actually,
like-
I'm making a rule right here and now. Supernatural and cannibalism is banned on this show.
Oh, come on. That's like my whole thing.
Man, you ruined my fun.
Anyway.
The last panel is talking about in Rome, in Leningrad, in Darwin. It says the door flew open. In he ran, the great long, red-legged Scissorman. Now, here's what I didn't know. This is a reference that will later be referenced of how do you say it? Struel Vel Pater. Yeah, Struel Vel Pater, which is a children's book that is like the second most popular aside from Grimm fairy tales, or like right below Grimm fairy tales, which is interesting. But yeah, I forgot. This is from that book, but this is not what they referenced.
Okay, yeah. I thought I kind of just skimmed over that, so like this wasn't like a very like researched thought, I guess. But I just thought that it was Peter and the Wolf. But I think I'm wrong about that now because I don't know.
Gotcha. Yeah. But before we go on, we shall take our break.
Okay, so yeah, we're gonna take a quick break, but we'll be right back. This is the comic panel on KSUA 91.5. We are reading Doom Patrol issues 19 through 22 by Grant Morrison. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back, everybody, to the comic panel on KSUA 91.5 FM. This week we have been reading and talking about Doom Patrol issues 19 to 22, written by Grant Morrison. So, continuing our discussion, we are looking at issue number 21 called Worlds in Collision.
Okay. Yep.
So, this one I was like a little shocked because I was all like, okay, they're in Kansas City. How did they get there? Like,
yeah,
it doesn't really explain that. Just kind of
they just kind of like end up in Kansas City, which I guess is how most people find themselves in Kansas City.
I want to give them the benefit of the doubt and just say that the mental institution was in Kansas City and they just entered the town.
Yeah.
But was it in Kansas City, Kansas, or Kansas City, Missouri?
I
mean,
know.
it doesn't make any distinction. It just says Kansas City.
Yeah, whichever one Grand Central Station is in, which I thought that was in like Pennsylvania or something, or New York, or I don't know.
Yeah, I thought GCT was also in New York, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
it's like Main Street.
No, it's definitely a specific place.
wait, no, what do you mean?
Look, you could have Main Street anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, that was confusing. But like, also apparently, like that's another thing though. I'm all like, is that canon that the Doom Patrol headquarters used to be in Grand Central Station, but the Grand Central Station in Kansas City? Because that's
Oh no, it's Union Station.
oh Union Station. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. Huh. I still don't think Kansas City, either in Kansas or in Missouri, has that good of like a public transit situation.
It does in this world.
Like they might
Superman
have
built it.
some buses, but I don't think they have like a terminal that can double as like a jet plane launch station. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You know, so it's interesting. It says worlds in collision and then Union Station. I see the motif there.
Is there? Is there a movie
I don't think
with that
that's
word?
no.
Yeah,
No.
What are you talking about?
I'm gonna say no.
Union? Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, but it was called Union Station before. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We're gonna move on.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, basically, Robotman is taking Jane to what used to be the headquarters of the Doom Patrol, which is apparently in a popular train station.
Well, we assume.
Yeah. I mean, I am going to assume because that's what it seems like to me. And yeah, basically he's all like, of course nobody's here. The Doom Patrol is dead. And it turns out that they left a note for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, which like I don't know why you just like leave a note at your last secret base to give directions to your next secret base.
Hey, isn't
And it seems like
you
they just
gotta-
walk in.
Isn't it like you gotta tell people where you're going? You gotta forward them your new address. You gotta make
Yeah,
sure
when you're
mail
moving
goes
into a new house to get your mail forwarded, you're not. When Batman sets up a new Batcave, he doesn't get all his bills forwarded to it.
there.
Like, it's just a new secret base.
Except for his Bat credit
I
card.
think the secret base part. Yeah. Secret base is a very important keyword
Yeah.
there.
I mean, granted, who except for members of the Doom Patrol would believe it?
I mean, fair, I guess. All the criminals would just look at it and say, no way they're that dumb.
Yeah.
I wanna find it. So wait, so there's Kansas City in which two states?
It's a bisected city. Kansas City, Kansas, and Kansas City, Missouri.
Oh, really? I didn't
Oh.
know that.
It's separated by a
Why did they do
river,
that?
I think. Well, okay, so Missouri was a state before Kansas, and so they made that Kansas City, and then Kansas became a state, and then also made a Kansas City. It was just like a part of it. Yeah, I guess. I don't know. All I know is like Kansas City, Missouri came before Kansas City, Kansas, and like there's a whole thing with like how Kansas got to statehood and whether it would be a slave owning state or a non-slave owning state. It was a whole big thing in pre-Civil War America. It was like a big deal, and then there was like the Missouri Compromise. No, it was after the Missouri Compromise, I think.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, it's a whole thing, part of like the 20-year lead up to the American Civil War.
Cool.
So you're saying that
I mean,
none of
obviously it
them
was
are
longer than
close to
that,
Rhode
but
Island?
No, none of them.
what
are
about Rhode Island? Yeah, no, there is not a Kansas City, Rhode Island. I can guarantee that.
All right. But yeah, basically that is where apparently the next base of operations of the Doom Patrol is. This is in Rhode Island, and then the Scissormen find Cliff and Jane, and they basically just like throw stuff at them and run away, and then they find a jet plane, and
Yeah, that's another thing. The Doom Patrol just left their version of the Blackbird just sitting there for anybody to jump in.
Well, no, just like they left a note, it was for the original members of the Doom Patrol to find out where they are now.
Okay, let me just put it out this way. If any other superhero did this to the secret base, not only would their next secret base be like attacked, but also like all of the tools that they left there would be used to attack them.
Yeah.
Like, there's like that story where like somebody, like in the Spider-Man universe, where like somebody stumbles upon like the Hobgoblin's old lair and is like, I guess I'll become the Hobgoblin, I guess.
Yeah. It's for real.
Somebody has to use all these secret weapons.
Yeah, it's got these bombs and this cool flying stuff, and the costume's like right there.
Going back to like Batman, like if Batman changed where his Batcave was and he was like, now in case you need to find me, here's a note, and also I've left my old Batmobile here.
Just so you could get there that much faster.
That way you don't have to take a taxi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's already in the GPS and the automated driving. Yeah. It's like this really feels like something that would happen in like a Deadpool comic when you like kind of overanalyze it. Like it's like
And then, so Jane turns into black and this, and I didn't notice that she kind of got like Sabretooth and Wolverine going on. Like she has claws and the knives.
yeah.
I don't know. Who's that other Lady Deathstrike? Is who that reminded me more of. She's the one with like in X2 with like the adamantium like fingernails.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And just like attacking them. That's what I got, but I can see where you got, because it's all Weapon X stuff, which is dumb. But
yeah. Also, I just appreciated how like Cliff's narration is like, and then something weird happened, and I'm like, this isn't already weird. Like.
Turns out that the Scissormen...
Everything was pretty normal up to there.
Yeah.
Turns out the Scissormen are basically paper mache. Nothing inside of them.
yeah, they're kind of like what they leave behind when they take somebody out. It's just like kind of empty space. They just happen to be wearing like a jumpsuit.
Empty space jumpsuit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like paper mache if like you touched it and it would give you like a million paper cuts. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Just get a leaf blower, I guess.
Well, they used a flamethrower.
Yeah, a rocket ship flamethrower. Also, yeah, actually, now that I'm thinking about this is giving me some big Paper Mario vibes.
No, you're gonna have to explain more.
Oh, well, have you ever played a Paper Mario game?
Nope.
No.
So yeah, basically it's a platformer, a Mario platformer, but everybody's made out of paper, and so like they use that in like clever mechanics for the game, and so like this would seem like something that would plausibly happen, a villain being able to cut you out of the world.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And like turning into bits of paper. Like, I mean, I was just playing Paper Mario Origami King, not an ad, and basically like there's paper mache like enemies that you like that explode into confetti. You defeat them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so is everything made of paper in that universe?
Yes. It's some
so it's
form of
like
paper. Sometimes there's cardboard.
So it's like the gingerbread man like conundrum. Like, is he made of house? Is the house made of flesh?
I would go back to your Waxman example.
Oh, it's different paper. Okay.
Yeah.
There is boats in Paper Mario, though, right?
Huh?
Don't.
But this is a bad tangent. No, but like, yeah.
Okay.
Continuing,
yeah.
They fly away, and they find Niles and Joshua.
Yeah, basically they're in Mount Justice. That's what it's called, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, they don't say Mount Justice, but also like it's a mountain that used to belong to the Justice League. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's Mount Justice.
Yeah, their prior base of operations.
Mm-hmm.
I like how he was all like, yeah, the government wanted to store like toxic waste in here, and I'm like, why?
But we moved it instead.
Well, I'm sure it was like offshore, away from people.
guess? I don't know. It still seems like there's better places to store your toxic waste.
It seems irresponsible. You're right.
They do that all the time, though, unfortunately, in reality.
Yeah. I mean, it's better than putting it in the oceans like real life, but still, like, it just seems like, you'd get like a spare piece of kryptonite in there that somebody left behind, and then suddenly you have a new kryptonite man or something.
Yeah. That's what kryptonite needs, is to be more radioactive.
Yeah. Anyway. So,
so this is the scene where Mama Pentecost, which is a personality of Crazy Jane, translates the book that was in the hands of the dude who was burning up at the end of the first issue.
Mm-hmm.
And so...
Yeah, this is probably the wordiest issue, because like they have to explain all the weird stuff that happens in the first 2 issues.
Yeah.
Or first 2, 3? Yeah, some amount of issues.
Yeah. Basically, it's called a Black Book, and it's the idea of it is to implant ideas by using words.
Yeah. Okay. I wanted to talk about this too, because I think that the idea of mimetic theory is really...
Otherwise known as Inception.
No, not otherwise known as Inception. Mimetic theory is not the same as Inception. Anyway.
You should play Metal Gear Solid 2, because it's all about mimetic theory.
Yeah, maybe I'll check it out. But yeah, I think that...
Also not an advertisement.
Mimetic theory
For like
is
a
really interesting. It's really interesting, but I feel like people just like don't want to talk about it, or like don't realize like how cool it can be, because it's like, that's where we get the word memes from, and then like that's the only
Which, I mean, like,
thing we can focus on.
It kind of is, and I feel like that's what most people like interpret the theory as. Like they just see it, and then it's like, oh yeah, I know what memes are, and then forget about it, even though like what we know memes as is not the point of mimetic theory.
Yeah. Because basically, it's like, so mimetics is like kind of a term coined, or like it comes from the same like verbiage as genetics. It's like it is passing on information, but rather than passing it on through DNA, it passes it on through information.
So like regular communication. Gotcha.
Yes and no, because it's like, it's the way that, because when things get communicated over and over and over again, it kind of just, it's like when we talk about like cultural osmosis, it's like, I know that information, but I don't know how I know that information. It becomes kind of just embedded in us.
So is it like subliminal messaging then?
Related to subliminal messaging, but not necessarily the same, because that has to
No,
do
I think...
with... Go ahead, Jake.
I think a good example is like the way that like children like have shared experiences over distances. Like they all know like the weird, like if you do the 6 lines and connect them, you make the S. Like there's stuff that like there's no... You can't like point to a specific origin of, but like if you talk to most kids, they have some recognition of it.
Yeah, that's a good point, Jake. Yeah,
I remember those days.
Yeah, it's more of a long form, unorigined phenomenon rather than.
It's like the origin of like generational fighting. Like, oh, we don't even remember what we're fighting about. We just know what we've always fought.
Kind of, yeah. Again, you're like on the...
I mean, that's like an application of it,
yeah.
But like it's like the overall theory is just like talking more about like how information is perceived and how it can be used by people, and like you can bring up like different examples of it and like how it I think it more reflects like on people, but yeah, it's weird. People have talked about it for a long time who are much smarter than us.
Yeah. So anyway, that's how this book works essentially, is with mimetic theory. And basically, so it's a metafiction, and it tells the story of its own creation, in which a group of philosophers create it to alter human thought, and it's supposed to like have these ideas which are parasites, which will enter human consciousness and transform it.
And then Cliff's like, "Oh, that explains everything."
Yeah. Which I don't blame him. Yeah, it's like, yeah, Cliff really is the stand-in for the reader. You know, it's all like, you know, what are we supposed to do with this? You know.
Yeah, so Jane then goes on to say the philosophers created a city called Orqwith, or a world city called Orqwith, which exists on another plane, reality intersecting with our own. They then wanted to create an alternative to so the reason they created it was they wanted to create it as an alternative to our materialistic world. And they outlined the history and geography.
Yeah. And then, yeah, basically, so...
Oh, and then it's called a Black Book.
Well, actually, the book is called The Book with No Name.
Just...
Is this too much?
Okay, so
I'm just
let me throw this out. This is like something I was thinking about when I was reading this, and maybe I'm just thinking too deep about it. But like the way that they, like the authors, like made this in like such a fully fleshed out way, in something that like it seems like it would have been like really difficult to just make by themselves. I kind of interpret that as like the I forget the name, but like that book has existed outside of humans, and like it being written in like our universe is like the first step of it taking over the universe. It like this isn't the first time that it has done this. If that makes sense.
I see what you mean. Because it said that it spreads by transmitting a piece of its consciousness to this world, and then spreads in waves, little by little here, and then speeds up.
That explains why, like, you know, Ralph, you know, was like talking about the Scissormen, and Jane was talking about them. You know, like basically it was starting to get into people's heads before the book was actually written and the Scissormen were out in the real world. Okay, that does actually make a lot more sense.
However, I am under the impression that this is the first time this book has been written, so... But we'll get to that part later.
Maybe. It could be. That's, you know, that's what's good about open-ended writing, I guess. We can both be right.
Yeah, and then, so yeah, they're supposed to get devoured by their own creation.
Or the philosophers.
The philosophers, sorry, that wrote the book. They become the gateway, or the book becomes the gateway between the imaginary and the real.
And so the Scissormen are a religious sect that worship a god that exists on the crossroads between two planes of reality.
Yeah. This is a really wordy issue. It's so much exposition and explaining.
I mean, they probably could have done it better, but I do like that they did at least like try to explain it, other than like not trying at all and just being like, "Man, that was weird. Glad we solved that problem. Hope that never comes back."
It's true. Like, I mean, okay, I just have to get into, like, you know, this is really, like, some of my, like, bread and butter for entertainment. Like, this is why I like this book, is, like, just the explanation is so weird. Like, you know, you just come away with more questions than answers sometimes. And, like, I don't know how to explain myself. I don't expect anybody else to like this, but I like it. Just like
Yeah. Okay, so the Scissormen are based off of the Boogeyman from Heinrich Hoffmann's Schulvelpeter. But I did, like, the little bit of research that I did, I don't see the Boogeyman in it. Like, I don't know what the Boogeyman they're talking about. Because the Boogeyman isn't named in the book.
that is really hard for
But,
me
like-
to say too, because I have no idea about the history of the Boogeyman, that story. I'm like lost
Yeah.
on that explanation.
But if you look at an image of Struwwelpeter, yes, it makes sense. Like, I can see the resemblance.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So maybe they just renamed
Yeah, I mean,
him that way.
Yeah.
it could be like any of like 100 things. Like it could be like the same thing as like the Grimm fairy tales, where like if you go back to the original texts, they're like way darker and include a lot more death than like what is like told to kids, and maybe like that is like a version that you got, or maybe it's like one of like 100 different translations that have been around since however long the stories have
Actually,
been.
the story of Struwwelpeter is that the guy, Heinrich Hoffmann, just wanted to make an alternative. He wanted to give a birthday present to his son, I think, and he wanted an alternative to the ones that were already there.
Oh, okay.
It
And
was
so
him
he
being
just
like,
created
"I
like
hate
a
this other book."
best-selling. He just created a best-selling like fairy tale anthology just out of spite
Yeah.
towards the other stories.
Mm.
All right, cool.
Also,
I can appreciate
Taylon, I think I better understand your question now, because I didn't understand when you were first asking it. But I think that maybe it's likely that the villain or whatever in that story probably was never called the Boogeyman. I think it was probably a nameless entity, and the Boogeyman is like, to say that it is a monster,
Oh, gotcha.
but it's an unnamed monster, basically.
Gotcha.
So that was just an example, is my best guess, without having any more context than what's been provided. So yeah, then Rebis is studying one of the Scissormen, been able to contain it in suspended animation. Well, not quite suspended, it can still talk. Mostly suspended animation.
Oh yeah, they don't really go into like how they captured a Scissorman, but I guess they just did.
Yeah.
So that.
Also, like, yeah, this is just like such a famous like line, I feel like, from this, is like, all I want is the answer to one simple question before I run screaming back to the bug house. Is this real or isn't it? And I'm just like, prime line. Which, like, I think, like, because this series goes on to really deal with the, like, and it's not gonna, like, do the, like, whole, like, fourth wall breaking of, like, oh, we're just in a comic book, it doesn't go like that, like, campy, but it really does deal with, like, the nature of reality, and that their existence could be, like, completely fake, and, like, how do you deal with that?
And then Niles Caulder talks about reality and unreality, and I'm sorry, I was just like, that's stupid. Like, that's, to me, it reminded me of that line from Pirates of the Caribbean 3 where the dude's like, the immaterial has become immaterial. Wow, it's really great.
Yeah, no, this is definitely, like, kind of parodying, like, intellectuals and pseudo-intellectuals. It's all like, the answer is so clear, and it's all like, that didn't say anything. Because, yeah, basically what Niles says is, like, there's, like, in Eastern philosophy, there, like, first there is a mountain, then there is no mountain, then there is. And it's like, without any context, that's not going to help anybody.
Yeah, No, that was the worst line, I think, where I was like, everything was making sense, and then he says that, and I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. Also, I love, like, that, right after that panel, I love Robotman's pose, because, like, it's not supposed to mean anything, like, it obviously isn't supposed to mean anything, but it's just, like, kind of silly, like, the way he's standing.
No.
It's like he's just got like one hand behind his head and he's just like curved spine, like it's like at a JoJo or something.
Yeah, I mean it's also like it's when Cliff like checks out. It's like I do not get paid enough to understand this. Just tell me where I need to go and what I need to do.
Yeah. It's true.
So Niles goes off to find out. Well, he says to find out just how infected or like present Orqwith is on the Earth, and then he takes Crazy Jane and Rebis with him, leaving Robotman and Clay to look after the captured Scissorman.
Yeah, looking back.
Yeah, the last thing he says is keep a close eye on the Scissorman. And what's the first thing they do? Is take a seat to not look at the Scissorman when they're talking to each other.
Okay, but they are at this table, and then Scissorman is just right there, just like mumbling. It's like the weirdest thing.
Yeah. Also, I was gonna say real quick too, like I'm not sure they'd be particularly interesting, but this book like is almost kind of set up like there was supposed to be like a spin-off or something, like you know how like there's like multiple X books, you know, for the X-Men, like because sometimes they just like, you know, like we've talked about like, oh, how did they get to Kansas City, and like, oh, where's the chief going with Crazy Jane, you know, it's all like I'm not sure if I'm like really interested in those stories, but like they almost make it seem like there's something missing sometimes. Like I'm like, huh, I never really thought about that, but also, I like that they're just like subtly introducing the chief is definitely a chocoholic. He eats candy like way too much.
I noticed that. I was like, I wish I could be like him, you know, just wielding a gun and then constantly pulling out chocolate, just and then explaining things to my friends perfectly.
Yeah, it's really it's the superhero fantasy that nobody wants to admit. You're always the smartest guy in the room. You have you don't have to walk. You have a gun and chocolate.
I don't know. There's a factor in there I'm not sure I agree with. I kind of like being able to walk.
Hey, you don't know that he's not able to walk. He just doesn't walk.
I feel like if he was able to, he would, though.
I'm okay. I could be wrong, but I think, and spoilers for like later on in the series, but I think that he might be faking it.
Wait, no, hold on. But why, though?
To trick everybody.
Okay, that's the true dream, though. Just like, nobody knows, but I can do more than I say.
No. That doesn't make any sense. Why would he pretend to not have the use of his limbs?
We don't even need to go into that. That's out of the purview of this episode.
Can we get to the next part? I want to get to the part where he uses his gun.
Yeah, you're right.
That's in the next issue.
Oh no. Okay. Let's speed up a little bit. Yeah. So basically, Josh Clay and Cliff have a conversation about like, you know, what they want kind of from their future, you know, like basically like and kind of their mental issues, and then they realize that the Scissorman escaped and got back up, and now they're coming to
and then you got more Scissormen.
Yeah. And then you know they attack. Oh, go ahead.
No, they had one job. One's the Scissorman. He just gets out.
So then, you know, they basically, like, they start blasting them and fighting them, and they're pretty easy to take down. But then one of them sneaks up on Joshua Clay and gets him, and so he's cut out of reality. And then, of course, everybody comes running into the room. What happened? And so I like how Niles just like puts his hand through is like interesting. Just like no regard for like that might mess things up. Maybe his like white shadow will disappear forever or something, and you never get him back. Like, or maybe like in the other world, you might be like pushing his organs around or something. Like, he's just like, huh. I put my hand through this.
And then Rebis is like, okay, I feel them. They're out there waiting for us. And they're like, and Cliff's like, well, what are we just waiting around here for? Let's go.
Yeah.
And then they get white cut out.
Yeah.
They turn into white.
Yeah, basically they're willing to get cut out in order to go to the other world and stop the threat at the source.
I don't think that was their purpose. Like, I thought they were just like, all right, let's go attack them.
Yeah, I mean their intention was a little unclear, but it worked out. Okay.
All right, back to the book.
Back to the book. So, we get a bunch of exposition on the thwart
Orqwith.
Orqwith. But I don't really care.
I love the quadrivium in the center. Oh wait, what was it? What? I just love that word. I think the central.
Quadrivium.
There we go. The city spreads like ripples, and the center point of that spread is called the quadrivium. In the center of that quadrivium is the ossuary, which is the cathedral of Orqwith. And there sits two priests, one who is a liar and one who is honest. And that's probably the more important parts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, say what you will about Grant Morrison, but he's really good at naming things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. That is very true. And he's really good at like having lots of like not lots of plot threads, but lots of just continuity stuff.
Gotcha.
And making it up if it doesn't exist.
So yeah, Crazy Jane, Robotman, and Rebis get teleported or transported or whatever to Orqwith, which is what happens when you turn into a white cutout. So all the people who have turned into white cutouts that we've seen in this book appear here, including Joshua Clay, but they're like zombified, I guess, in a sense.
Yeah.
Like, not responsive.
Yeah. Classic zombies, not brain-eating zombies.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then they find Joshua, but like he's just like kind of out of it. They say like sleepwalking is another way to describe it. And then we come to an old guy with like he's got papers everywhere, but he's got a big fancy office with big bookshelves. And then
okay, wait.
He's a doctor.
I was gonna say, in the previous scene, they're so lucky that when they got cut out, they didn't like turn out like Joshua. Like, how did they roll the dice and like not have that happen?
That's
Don't
a good
even
point.
know.
That is a good point.
Wow. That kind of messes with.
I mean, well, they didn't get like cut out. They got transported, I guess. They got like there is a mountain, there is no mountain, then there is again.
Right. Yeah.
Into,
okay. I guess by understanding where or that there is a crossroads between the real world and the imaginary world, they were able to enter the imaginary world.
And that crossroads just so happened to appear right outside of their base in Rhode Island.
Mm-hmm. Which, I mean, like, because the imaginary world is limitless and expansive, I suppose the crossroads could be anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, the center of the universe is anywhere because it's, like, limitless.
Gotcha. But yeah, so the old guy is Reinman, that was one of the philosophers that wrote the book. And Niles says, like, all right, hey, let's talk. And then he, pulls out a gun and he's like, all right, now you're a cripple.
Yeah.
No,
I mean, that's
okay,
the short
so
way
it's
of
the
putting it.
perfect setup
Like,
because he's like, I wouldn't talk to you. He's like, I'm not gonna talk to you, and he calls him like a cripple or something. He's like, and then Niles just shoots
Yeah.
him like right perfectly in the hip, and then he's like, well, now you're a cripple too, so let's talk.
Oh man.
Yeah. So the negative spirit left Rebis's body and is attacking the
Scissormen.
Scissormen.
Yeah, and then like basically they shine like a big like bat signal type light at the negative spirit, and then that like turns like it's weird because it basically it cuts the negative spirit up into shreds, but then Rebis's body just Rebis without the negative spirit like goes and just like kind of like gets in the raining shreds, and then so the negative spirit reforms inside of them.
Yeah. And then now the negative spirit has all this information about Orqwith and is just spouting off, I would consider nonsense, but apparently Crazy Jane knows exactly what they're talking about.
Yeah.
He's like, all right, now I know how to stop them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very like convenient, but also like it's very good at making it seem like it makes sense, and that it's like it has a perfectly reasonable explanation rather than being convenient. So yeah, basically so we kind of already talked about the religious sect that the Scissormen belong to in this imaginary world, and like they discover the way to defeat them at the same time that Niles discovers the way to defeat them by talking to the philosopher that helped create the world, which is there is a logical contradiction that the world is founded on, which is the question, why is there something instead of nothing? Which, yeah. And so basically all they have to do is ask the two priests in the cathedral that question, and then they will realize that their world should not exist, and so it will be destroyed.
Yeah. And so the plan that Rebis, Crazy Jane, and Robotman come up with is that basically Robotman and Crazy Jane will distract all the Scissormen the negative spirit, Robotman and Crazy Jane, will distract all the Scissormen while Rebis will be able to enter the cathedral and ask the priest the question.
Mm-hmm. Which basically everything goes right, like it's like there's some surprises, but like for the most part, like
so here's the thing. So he asked the question, right? Remember, one priest is a liar and one priest is honest. So they ask the question, and they both respond the same way. There is not nothing instead of something, or there is not something instead of nothing. Hold on, but I think that's it.
Well, no, they do not know why there is something instead of nothing.
Gotcha.
Is what they say at first.
Gotcha. Yes, and so then Rebis is like, so the liar. Why is there something instead of nothing? And then he says there is something instead of nothing. And then he's like, well, then you can't exist. And because if he's a liar, if he says something, it's the opposite. The truth is the opposite.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, like it can't be true that there is something instead of nothing because that's what he said.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's, I guess, is the logical fallacy, which is like the Deus Ex Machina to like hit and like to undo all the stuff.
Yeah.
I feel a little like that's weak.
Yeah.
I mean, like, yeah, once they explained it, it made sense, but like as it was happening, I didn't really understand.
No, I didn't
like what was going on.
Yeah. And like to me, it's like half of this like story is like some like cool like high concept philosophical like things, and then the other half is like mushrooms philosophy, like
Yeah.
just like getting eating mushrooms and being all like, yeah, what if like why is there something instead of nothing, and like
oh, you talking about
I mean,
like
but
that
I guess
70s
like
show with...
no, I'm not specifically referencing that 70s show, just like in general, like
well, like how they would sit around in the circle and then...
oh yeah, sure,
Gotcha.
like yeah, that kind of speaking.
yes, yeah. I don't know. Like I don't have a problem with like the question specifically because I guess it is kind of like the root of like questioning thinking is like why is there something that we can see instead of not that? Why are things the way they are? Is basically
Right.
what it boils down to. It's like I don't really have a problem with the question, but like I do see where you're coming from with like they just can like kind of solve it at the end because they have to. It's limits of the medium,
Right.
but
Mhm.
Yeah.
So basically, Niles is like, all right, the world needs the Doom Patrol more than ever, and they're like, okay, fine, we'll join. And then in the epilogue, we get introduced to Rhea Jones, which was part of the original Doom Patrol, who I'm going out on a limb and say that she got into a coma because of the gene bomb.
Yeah.
So
that's fair.
yeah. But so she's currently in a coma, and then some entity shows up, which we eventually, in later issues, get are told is the Red Jack.
Mm-hmm. Also, I just love that like the nurse is all like superheroes. They make me sick. It's just like it's making my job harder.
Mm-hmm. And then there's in the second epilogue we have Herr Niemand entering the house of Dr. Bruckner, and Dr. Bruckner's like, "Oh my gosh, it got out," or he got out.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't know what that is, but it seems like it's pretty bad.
Mm-hmm. Is this also in? Oh, this is in Paraguay.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought this was in Patagonia.
No.
So I was like, hey,
I mean,
is there a relation?
It's close. It's South America, but
yeah, I believe that will turn out to be Mr. Nobody, the villain of the third arc.
Yeah, which I feel like I don't know. I haven't gotten far enough into the story to know much about Mr. Nobody.
Mm-hmm.
But he was heavily involved in the TV show.
Yeah, he was the main villain in season 1.
So, okay, maybe we don't have time for it, but what's the deal with Mr. Nobody? Like, is he just like an invisible man? Is he like antimatter? Like, what's the...
So, none of those things. He does have a physical form. In fact, he looks kind of like an exclamation point.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, and he basically sat in sensory deprivation tanks. It was kind of like that,
Yes.
except for it was all white space. And so that basically affected his mind, and he like kind of went crazy, and like it was like there's no world, there's no time, and it kind of gave him powers to affect reality.
Okay.
Because of his mental break?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is not how it went in the TV show.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Basically,
I feel like that...
Oh, go ahead.
I feel like that goes more into like the like weird occult stuff because like if you are somebody who subscribes to like real life magic, it does like culminate into like kind of affecting the world. Like the world is based on a code and you can influence the code. Kind of like your Neo, but with less martial arts.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. Basically, he was at one point he was like a low member of like the Brotherhood of Evil, which is another thing that's all like, which one was first, the X-Men or the Doom Patrol? But anyway.
Oh, because of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
They just took a word off.
Anyway, so yeah, he was like a low-level member of the Brotherhood of Evil, and then he was all like, well, I want to be like better. I want to be recognized, you know? And then so he went to a Nazi scientist in South America, and they did that experiment on him, and then, yeah.
I just remember, like, there's a whole scene of the Nazi scientist being a puppet. That was just weird.
Yeah, that happens in the show.
Yeah.
Wait, all right, yeah.
Were you talking about the comic?
Yeah, I was.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Yeah. Okay, so it is similar in some aspects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, sounds weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, I recommend this series. You know, it kind of slows down at the end in the third volume because, like, Grant Morrison was even getting bored on it. But, like, yeah, it's pretty good. I would recommend at least the first 2 books, if not the third one too, because, like, at least you get the conclusion.
Would you recommend reading it before watching the show?
I don't know, you know, because it's like both have their merits, and honestly, like, they're like, it's not like a direct one-to-one translation of what goes on. So I feel like both have, like, you know, you're not gonna feel like spoiled if you have watched or if you've read it and then you watch the show. But I don't think it's necessary because, you know, you get proper introduction to the characters in both.
Yeah, and in the, like you said, not a one-to-one representation of what happens in the show versus the comic book, because even the Doom Patrol, there are different characters in there.
Yeah, for instance, like, Rebis is, like, not represented at all. It's just Larry Trainor.
Yeah, and Rita Farr is in it, and what's his name?
Cyborg, yeah. Lots of difference.
I like it. I like the fact that you said that, like, it won't spoil the other one.
No,
so that's nice.
I wouldn't say so.
Except for maybe Red Jack. I think you get a. I don't know. Sorry, Red Jack doesn't, like, do anything with Rhea, but Red Jack is similar.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. Like, okay, here, I'm gonna come down on this. I would say that if you feel like, you know, like, because the themes are still present in both. So if you feel like, you know, you really would prefer to get, like, the themes of this story packaged in a more, like, cohesive, like, big way, like, big picture way, then read the book first. If you don't really, like, you know, you just want to maybe be introduced into some of these weird concepts with these weird characters, go ahead and watch the show first, and then, you know, you can dive deeper with the book.
I will say, for me personally, I like the TV show better. And that's mainly because there are some aspects of this book that kind of started off as confusing and then morphed into me thinking it was dumb.
Yeah, I guess if you're more like me and you really like, you know, the weird people that, like, speak nonsense and the pseudo philosophy, then read the book. If you don't like that, they cut all of that out in the show. Well, not all of it, but, you know, the vast majority.
Yeah, I feel like this book, like, there's a spectrum of how media kind of treats its audience and, like, what it expects its audience to bring to whenever, like, the audience interprets whatever media it is. I feel like this book goes a little too far towards trusting the audience to know what it's talking about. Especially, like, okay, so we read this book being able to look up any reference we wanted to with our phones or on the internet. If I had picked this book up in 1989 and, like, didn't own an encyclopedia, then, like, I would have not kept reading because I wouldn't have understood any of what I was talking about.
Yeah.
That's why you go to the library, Jake.
But maybe I don't want to go to the library. hypothetical me in 1989. I just want to pick up some Batman books, some cool Batman books, and read about him beating up the Joker.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Is there also a possibility that people in 1989 knew more than we do of like cultural references?
No.
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 I feel like there's a possibility.
I do not. Okay.
See, like,
hypothetically, I will agree. But like probably, like I don't believe that if you walked up to the average comic reader, they would understand like the weird Buddhist principle of like a Zen tone or whatever they call it, where it's like literally just a riddle to make you think. Like I don't believe that if you pick somebody off the street in 1989, they would know that.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's very
I
niche
think
audience.
that we have. What's that?
I was just saying it's a really small audience there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I think the internet does definitely help, and I feel like maybe this was definitely written for a niche audience of like college graduate to really understand like taking like 5 literature courses. Yeah. But after a second read, I still like it. The art holds up. We didn't really get a chance to really talk about the art, but it wasn't like I didn't find it exceptional, but there was good moments for sure. Does anybody else have any other thoughts? No? Okay. Well then, we'll end our show. I hope everybody has a good, safe New Year's Eve. You've been listening to us on KSUA 91.5 FM. Until next time, this has been the Comic Panel. I'm Cody.
I'm Taylon.
I'm Jacob.
And I'm Shawenta.
All right, everybody have a good night.